In societies dominated by modern conditions of production, life is presented as an immense accumulation of spectacles. Everything that was directly lived is receded into a representation. That was the first in a series of over 200 short theses that made up Guy Debord's The Society of the Spectacle. Published in 1967, French theorist Guy Debord made a radical critique of modern consumer capitalism and media culture. His central claim was that real human life has been replaced by images, representations, and passive consumption. In other words, a spectacle that dominates society. One might be tempted to label this work as Marxist and move on, but I think there's value in looking at Debord's concept of the spectacle because it gives us a unique perspective on modern society. As a leading member of the Situationist International, a political and artistic movement that was active from 1957 to 1972, Debord drew on avant-garde art movements like Dada and Surrealism. The famous Surrealist painting The Treachery of Images by René Magritte introduces us to an important concept, the difference between reality and representation. That is, the difference between a real physical pipe and the representation of a pipe pictured on a screen or as a painting. A look back at Debord's first thesis shows us that modern life is no longer primarily lived directly, but experienced through representations, and those representations increasingly define what reality is. Debord was also heavily influenced by the ideas of Karl Marx. In fact, Debord's first thesis alludes to the beginning of Capital by Marx. The wealth of those societies in which the capitalist mode of production prevails presents itself as an immense accumulation of commodities. Debord extends Marx's analysis of commodities by arguing that, under modern conditions, even social relations begin to take on commodity-like form through images. Let's take a deeper look at Debord's work. I'm going to categorize it, where the first category is what the spectacle is. 4. The spectacle is not a collection of images. It is a social relation between people that is mediated by images. 34. The spectacle is capital accumulated to the point that it becomes images. The next category is what the spectacle does to people. 28. The reigning economic system is a vicious cycle of isolation. Its technologies are based on isolation, and they contribute to that same isolation. From automobiles to television, the goods that the spectacular system chooses to produce also serve it as weapons for constantly reinforcing the conditions that engender lonely crowds. With ever-increasing concreteness, the spectacle recreates its own presuppositions. What the spectacle does to truth and reality. 9. In a world which really is topsy-turvy, the true is a moment of the false. 17. I'm going to paraphrase this thesis. It argues that modern life has shifted from defining ourselves by who we are, to what we own, to how we appear. And in that final stage, appearances become more important than reality itself. He calls it a degradation of being into having, and later a shift from having to appearing. Let's look at one more. 2. The images detached from every aspect of life merge into a common stream in which the unity of that life can no longer be recovered. Fragmented views of reality regroup themselves into a new unity as a separate pseudo-world that can only be looked at. The specialization of images of the world evolves into a world of autonomized images where even the deceivers are deceived. The spectacle is the concrete inversion of life, an autonomous movement of the non-living. Here, Debord is arguing that images, things that are not alive, begin to organize and direct real human life. Representation stops reflecting reality and starts replacing it. The passages we've looked at are a few of the relatively shorter theses in the book. In fact, situationist critics like anarchist Jas Buffet called the book obscure situationist jargon. I can definitely understand the argument that the ideas expressed were inherently simple, yet obscured intentionally via deliberately difficult language. Debord argues that the spectacle emerges out of advanced capitalism, that once production expands far enough, it begins to shape not just goods, but perception itself. I think that this is largely correct. Where I would disagree is in treating capitalism as the primary cause. The mechanisms he describes, the mediation of reality through images, the replacement of lived experience with representation, seem to appear wherever human tendencies toward status and recognition are amplified by large-scale systems, whether those systems are economic or political. Take, for example, the propaganda of the Chinese Communist Party, North Korea, or Russia. These authoritarian states also construct image-based realities and replace lived experience with narratives. In these cases, the spectacle doesn't take the form of consumer identity, but political identity, constructed through propaganda, narrative, and image control. The presence of image-based reality in non-capitalist systems suggests that the mechanism may not be uniquely tied to capitalism, even if capitalism intensifies it. Debord may be describing a structural feature of modern mediated societies, but misattributing its primary cause to a single economic system. Additionally, Debord presents individuals as passive participants in this system. While there is some truth to that, I think it's incomplete. This is due to the fact that people don't just experience the spectacle, they willingly participate in it. Individuals participate in the spectacle due to their personal agency. Every day, people make choices about what they consume, what they value, and how they live. Every time I open YouTube, I'm choosing to participate in this system. While Debord's response is to rebel and use techniques like determinant to subvert the spectacle, even those methods tend to get absorbed back into the system. There's another response, though. One can participate in the spectacle less. You can reduce participation in systems that prioritize appearance over reality, even if you cannot fully escape them. While I disagree with Debord's response, his concept of the spectacle remains useful. It provides a way to examine everyday life, especially in areas like social media, entertainment, and advertising. So the real question isn't whether the spectacle exists, it's how much of your life it's shaping, and what you're going to do about it. Let me know in the comments how you plan to respond to Debord's concept of the spectacle, and thanks for watching.